Stepfather took mom and siblings on vacation while I slept. Now I'm at dad's and their perfect trip is falling apart. Anyway, I'm 16 and my family situation is, let's call it messy. Like the kind of messy that makes you sit there and wonder if someone's secretly filming your life for a reality show. Spoiler alert. No cameras, just drama. Here's some quick context. My parents? Not exactly the love story of the century. They never got married, and honestly, I don't think they even liked each other that much. They split when I was super young, like barely old enough to remember. I've been doing the whole custody shuffle ever since. 1 week with mom, the next with dad. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, it's not like they hated me or anything. They just weren't great at, communicating or being in the same room without glaring at each other. Fun times. But things got way more complicated 2 years ago when my mom decided to get remarried. That's when Eddie entered the picture. Eddie, my stepdad, who, how do I put this nicely, might actually be the most passive-aggressive man on the planet. He came with 2 kids of his own, which was fine in theory. I wasn't exactly thrilled about the whole new family thing, but I figured I'd adjust. I mean, people do this all the time, right? Blended families, new beginnings, all that jazz. Except, it didn't quite turn out that way. From day one, Eddie made it pretty clear that I wasn't part of the package he signed up for. He didn't say it outright, of course. That would have been too honest. No, instead, he had this way of ignoring me that felt so intentional it was almost impressive. Like, I'd walk into the room, and he'd suddenly find something super interesting on his phone. Or I'd say, "Good morning," and he'd grunt without looking up from his coffee. At first, I thought maybe he was just awkward or shy or whatever. But nope, that's just who he is, or who he is to me anyway. And his kids? They picked up on it real quick. It's like they had some secret family meeting where Eddie gave them the "don't bother with the outsider" speech. They'd talk to each other, joke around, share inside jokes, but the second I tried to chime in, crickets. It was like I wasn't even there. Honestly, it felt like I was some stranger crashing their family dinner every night. I tried to bring it up to my mom a few times. I'd tell her, "Hey, is it just me? Or does Eddie not like me? Or, why do his kids act so weird around me?" And every single time she'd brush it off. "Oh, it's nothing personal," she'd say. "He's just getting used to things." Or, "You're imagining it. They're just shy." Shy? Yeah, okay. Sure, that's why they have no problem acting like best friends with her, but go completely silent the second I walk into the room. Anyway, I've been dealing with this for 2 years now. 2 years. I kept telling myself it'd get better eventually, that maybe they just needed more time to warm up to me. Spoiler alert, it didn't. If anything, it got worse. Eddie stopped even pretending to be polite, and his kids followed his lead. And my mom? She just kept ignoring it. It's like she didn't want to rock the boat, so she chose to act like everything was fine, even when it so clearly wasn't. But last Saturday, that was the breaking point. I woke up that morning, and the house was weirdly quiet. Usually, Eddie's kids are up early, stomping around and being loud, and Eddie's in the kitchen making his gross protein shakes. But that morning, nothing. At first, I thought maybe they just slept in, but then I noticed my mom's bedroom door was open. Empty. I checked the other rooms, no one. The house was completely empty, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd slept through some kind of zombie apocalypse. Then I saw the note. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, written on one of those sticky pads my mom always keeps by the fridge. It was short, barely 2 sentences. Something like, "Eddie and I are taking the kids on a short trip. You'll be fine here. Just watch the house for us. Watch the house for us." That's it. No explanation. No heads up. No, "Hey, we're leaving. Do you need anything while we're gone?" Just gone. Like I didn't even exist. I don't even know how to explain how that felt. It was like this weird mix of anger and sadness and just emptiness. Like, okay, I get it. They don't like me. But to straight up leave me behind? To not even tell me they were going? That felt like a whole new level of rejection. I sat there staring at that stupid note for, I don't even know how long. My brain was just spinning, trying to make sense of it. Did they forget about me? Did they not care? Was this their way of telling me I wasn't part of the family? And then it hit me, I was done. I was so done. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Couldn't keep living in a house where I was treated like an outsider. So I grabbed my phone, texted my dad, and told him I needed to talk. I didn't even know what I was going to say yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't staying here anymore. So, after texting my dad, I just kind of sat there in the kitchen, staring at that stupid sticky note like it was going to magically explain itself. Spoiler, it didn't. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Like, how do you just leave your kid behind without even saying anything? Who does that? And it wasn't like they accidentally forgot me or anything. They left a note. They knew what they were doing. My dad replied pretty quickly. He said, "Come over. Let's talk." No questions, no hesitation. That's the thing about my dad. He's not perfect, but when I need him, he's there. Always. I started packing right away. Not in a storming out dramatically kind of way, but in a I'm not coming back here kind of way. I didn't even take much, just a backpack with some clothes, my charger, and whatever else I thought I'd need for a while. I figured if I needed anything else, I'd deal with it later. The whole time I was packing, I kept waiting for my mom to call or text or something. Like, maybe she'd realize she'd messed up and try to explain. But nope, nothing. Just radio silence. By the time I left the house, I wasn't sad anymore. I was just done. Like, emotionally checked out. I walked to the bus stop, headphones on, trying to block out the million thoughts racing through my head. I didn't even look back at the house when the bus pulled away. When I got to my dad's place, he was already waiting for me at the door. He looked worried, which isn't something I see from him often. My dad's usually the cool, laid-back type, but I could tell he knew something was up. He didn't say anything right away, just gave me one of those quick, awkward dad hugs and said, "Come in." We sat down in the living room, and he asked, "What happened?" That's when I kind of lost it. I didn't mean to. I'm not usually a big, share your feelings kind of person, but it all just came out. The note, the trip, the way Eddie had been treating me for years, how my mom always ignored it. By the time I finished, I was practically yelling. My dad just sat there, listening, his jaw getting tighter and tighter. When I was done, he didn't say anything for a minute. He just leaned back in his chair, staring at the floor like he was trying to keep himself from exploding. Finally, he said, "That's not okay. None of this is okay." I could tell he was angry. Not at me, but at the whole situation. And honestly, felt good to have someone on my side for once. He asked me if I wanted to stay with him for a while, and of course I said yes. There was no way I was going back to my mom's house after what happened. He told me I could have my old room back, and we spent the rest of the evening setting it up. Felt weird being back there after so long, but it also felt safe. Like I didn't have to walk on eggshells all the time. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. The next day, my dad was still fuming. He's not one to let things slide, especially when it comes to me. I mean, he's always been protective, but this was a whole new level. He told me he wasn't going to let this go until he figured out exactly what was going on. "There's more to this," he said. "People don't just treat someone like that for no reason. I'm going to find out why." I didn't really know what he meant at the time, but I could tell he was serious. He started making calls that afternoon. First, he tried to get answers from my mom again, but that went nowhere fast. Apparently, she just kept dodging his questions, saying stuff like, "You don't understand the situation," and "It's more complicated than you think," which like, okay, but complicated how? She wouldn't say. That's when my dad decided to get creative. He told me he was going to reach out to a couple of people he knew who were friends with Eddie, or at least acquaintances. Small town stuff, you know? Everyone sort of knows everyone, or at least someone who knows someone. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, what were the chances Eddie's friends would spill anything? But my dad has this way of getting people to open up. It's kind of his superpower. Later that evening, he came back with answers. And let me just say, I was not ready for what he found out. Apparently, Eddie had been going around for years thinking that I was the reason my mom didn't move in with him sooner. Like, he genuinely believed I was some kind of manipulative, rebellious kid who hated him and didn't want my mom to marry him. And where did he get that idea? My mom. She told him that, Not in those exact words, but close enough. She said I had issues with the relationship, and that I wasn't ready for a blended family. She made it sound like I was the one holding everything back, like I was some kind of obstacle she had to work around. I just sat there, staring at my dad as he explained it. I couldn't even process it at first. My mom, the person who's supposed to have my back no matter what, lied about me. She made me out to be a problem, and then she just let Eddie believe it. She let him treat me like crap for years because of something she made up. And the worst part? She never even tried to fix it. She just let it happen. My dad was furious. "This all makes sense now," he said. "That's why he's been treating you like this. He thought he was protecting his family from you. And your mom? She just let him believe it. She let you take the blame for everything." He shook his head, like he couldn't believe what he was saying. "You deserve better than this, kid. So much better." I didn't even know what to say. I mean, what do you say when you find out your own mom threw you under the bus like that? I felt sick. Like, physically sick. All those years of feeling like I didn't belong, of wondering what I'd done to make Eddie and his kids hate me. It wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. But knowing that didn't exactly make it hurt any less. That night I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything in my head. The cold stares from Eddie, the way his kids ignored me, the way my mom always brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. And now I knew why. She wasn't ignoring it because she didn't notice. She was ignoring it because she caused it. The next morning, my dad told me he was going to talk to his lawyer about getting full custody. "You're not going back there," he said. "Not until I know you'll be treated with the respect you deserve." He didn't say it outright, but I could tell he was ready to fight for me if he had to. And honestly, that was the first time in a long time I felt like someone was really in my corner. Meanwhile, my mom kept trying to call me. I didn't answer. Couldn't. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, thanks for ruining my life and letting me believe I was the problem for 2 years. Really appreciate it?" Yeah, no. I wasn't ready to talk to her, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be. So, things were already a mess, but of course they were about to get even messier. My dad wasn't the type to just sit back and wait for things to sort themselves out. He decided the next step was to confront Eddie directly. "If your mom won't tell the truth, then I'll get it from the guy who's been living the lie," he told me. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. On one hand, I wanted Eddie to know the truth. On the other hand, I didn't exactly trust this whole situation not to blow up in everyone's face. But my dad wasn't asking for permission. He tracked down Eddie's number through one of those mutual acquaintances and gave him a call. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I could hear my dad's voice from the hallway, and let's just say he wasn't exactly using his indoor voice. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough. Stuff like, "You think my son's the problem? And she lied to you, Eddie. She lied to everyone." It was intense. When my dad hung up, he came out of the room looking like he'd just gone a few rounds in a boxing match. I asked him what happened, and he just shook his head. "Eddie had no idea," he said. "He honestly thought you hated him. Your mom twisted everything to make herself look like the victim." Apparently, Eddie didn't take the news well. He didn't say much during the call, but my dad could tell he was blindsided. I mean, imagine finding out your wife has been lying to you for years about something that huge. My dad said Eddie sounded more confused than angry, like he didn't even know how to process it. "I think he's going to talk to your mom," my dad said. "And when he does, things are going to get ugly." He wasn't wrong. Later that evening, my mom showed up at my dad's house. I wasn't expecting her, so when I heard the doorbell, I just assumed it was one of the neighbors or something. But nope, it was her. She looked, I don't know, frazzled, like she'd been crying, but also like she was trying really hard to hold it together. My dad opened the door, and before he could say anything, she started talking. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice all shaky. My dad didn't move. He just stood there, blocking the doorway like some kind of human shield. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone cold. I'd never heard him talk to her like that before. It was weird, but also kind of satisfying in a way. She glanced past him and saw me sitting on the couch. "I need to talk to him," she said. "Please." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, waiting to see what she'd do. My dad turned to me and said, "You don't have to talk to her if you don't want to." And honestly, I didn't want to, but at the same time I kind of did. I wanted to hear what she had to say, even if I wasn't sure I'd believe it. "Fine," I said, standing up, "but only for a few minutes." My dad stepped aside reluctantly, and my mom walked in, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. She sat down on the edge of the chair, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I know you're angry," she started, "and you have every right to be. But I need you to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted. "That you lied about me? That you let Eddie treat me like crap because of something you made up? What exactly am I supposed to understand?" She flinched, like my words physically hurt her. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "Eddie wanted me to move in with him, but I wasn't ready." I panicked. I thought if I told him you weren't okay with it, it would buy me more time. I just stared at her, completely dumbfounded. "So you used me as an excuse? You made me the bad guy to cover for your own issues." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said quickly. I thought once we got married, things would settle down. But then Eddie started treating you differently, and I didn't know how to fix it." "You didn't even try," I shot back. "You just let it happen. You let me sit there for 2 years thinking I was the problem. Do you have any idea how that felt? Do you even care?" "I do care," she said, her voice breaking. "I care more than you know. I made a mistake, okay? Terrible mistake. But I didn't know how to undo it." By this point, I was shaking. I felt so many things at once. Anger, sadness, betrayal, that I didn't even know how to respond. My dad must have noticed because he stepped in. "You don't get to play the victim here," he told her. "You had plenty of chances to come clean, and you chose not to. This is on you." My mom turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "I know I messed up," she said. "But he's my son. I don't want to lose him." That's when I finally stood up. "You already did," I said quietly. I didn't mean for it to come out so harsh, but it was the truth. In that moment, I couldn't imagine ever forgiving her for what she'd done. She looked like I'd just slapped her. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just, please give me a chance to make it right." But I couldn't. Not then. "I think you should go," I said, turning away. My dad didn't say anything, but he walked her to the door and closed it behind her. And just like that, she was gone. After my mom left, I just sat there in silence for a long time. My dad didn't push me to talk, which I appreciated. He just stayed nearby, kind of keeping an eye on me like he was waiting to see if I'd need him. I didn't cry or anything. I think I'd already run out of tears by that point. I just felt empty, like all the fight had drained out of me. Over the next few days, things started to unravel even more. Just not for me this time. Turns out Eddie had confronted my mom after my dad's call. He demanded to know the truth, and when she admitted to lying, he completely lost it. I wasn't there to see it, thank God, but according to my dad's sources, aka the same mutual acquaintances who helped him reach Eddie, their fight was brutal. Eddie packed up his stuff and left the house that night, taking his kids with him. A few days later, he filed for divorce. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little vindicated when I heard about it. Like finally, the truth was out, and everyone could see who was really to blame. But at the same time, I felt, I don't know, sad? Not for Eddie or my mom, but for the version of my life I'd been holding on to in my head. The one where maybe, just maybe, we could have been a real family if things had gone differently. That fantasy was gone now, and I had to let it go. Meanwhile, my dad's lawyer worked fast. Within a week, he filed for full custody, citing everything that had happened. My mom leaving me behind, the emotional neglect, the toxic environment. I didn't have to do much aside from tell the truth about how things had been at my mom's house. The court didn't even hesitate. My dad got full custody, and just like that, I officially didn't have to go back. I thought I'd feel relieved, and I did, but it was also bittersweet. I mean, yeah, I hated living at my mom's place, but she was still my mom, you know? Cutting ties with her felt like cutting off a piece of myself. Even now, I'm not sure how to feel about it. Sometimes I wonder if I should have given her another chance. But then I remember how she let me take the blame for years, and all that anger comes rushing back. My mom tried reaching out a few more times after that, but I never responded. She sent texts, left voicemails, even wrote me a letter once. I didn't read it. Couldn't. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'll be ready someday, but right now, I'm not. My dad says it's okay to take my time, that I don't owe her anything, and he's right. For once, I'm putting myself first. It's been a couple of months now, and things are better. I'm living full-time with my dad, and it's been nice, actually. He's not perfect. He still burns toast every morning and forgets to buy milk half the time, but he's trying. He's there. And that's more than I can say about my mom. I've started therapy, which has been helping a lot. My therapist says I have a lot of unresolved feelings about my mom, which, yeah, no kidding. But she also says it's okay to feel conflicted. She says healing isn't a straight line, and I'm starting to believe her. Some days I feel okay. Other days, not so much. But I'm getting there little by little. One thing I've learned through all of this is that family isn't just about blood or marriage or who lives under the same roof. It's about who shows up for you, who makes you feel safe, who makes you feel loved. My dad's been that person for me, and I'm grateful for him every single day. As for my mom, I don't know. Maybe one day we'll have a relationship again, but it's going to take a lot of work. And it has to start with her. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding. On figuring out who I am outside of all this chaos. It's not easy, but it feels like the first real step forward I've taken in a long time. And for the first time, I feel like I have a chance at something better. Something healthier. Something that feels like home. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. Feels good to get this all off my chest. If you've ever been through something like this, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Or if you're still figuring it out, just know you're not alone. We'll get through it one step at a time.